steal all side, ride me, baby. I ain't never gonna stop. Come on now, baby. Ride me straight to the top. Yeah, straight to the top.
I think, I know there's a lot of the conversation he wants to have. If it's not someone who understands where he's coming from, yeah, I can definitely see them like turning into arguments in a hurry, because like, especially like you said, like with allies and that sort of thing, it's like, it's
I
like,
got a story,
it's like they
man.
think that you're being impressive, and you're like, holy cow, this is me trying to be understanding. And if you can't, at least that's how I feel, and as myself sometimes, and I see it in you, where like you're trying to be understanding, and they're being like, oh, you're still making it impressive, and you're like, okay, you're giving me no credit whatsoever for the amount of
You
trying
already
I'm
figured out
doing
what I'm saying before even listening to me.
There you go. There you go. You
By
got
the
your
way,
vision.
this
Yeah.
is Bad Ideas, Good Stories.
yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, is it recording? Yeah. Perfect.
Number 30, I guess.
29.
Is it, yeah, give or take.
Yeah, something like
We'll
that.
have to see. We'll have to
Yeah,
see
we'll
what
find
number
out.
this is. When you listen to it, it'll probably be labeled the proper number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
maybe we'll
basically the thing. I think a lot of these people that are online. We were talking about cancel culture and about what I would consider social justice issues and being an ally, but just not being an ally enough.
Sure.
I recently deleted Facebook for this exact reason.
Sure.
I endured the last barrage of insults, condescension, and berating for not being politically incorrect or being politically correct enough from an ally, and I'm tired of it.
And is this someone recognizing that you're not being politically incorrect, that you're just not being politically correct enough? Like they're even realizing that?
Well, they, I don't know. Whatever I would say or any position I would put forward was automatically bigotry because it questioned a dominant narrative. Specifically, this one was a trans issue with, I think the fighter's name is Fallon Fox.
Familiar yet?
Yeah, and Fallon Fox is a transgendered woman who fights MMA, who fought two women in the MMA and severely damaged them, fractured skull and a broken orbital bone, and entered the MMA fights. This is already, we're in it. It's going to be, I'm bigoted just for mentioning the fucking topic.
Well, Fallon Fox does come up frequently in MMA, just in general, because she's such an anomaly. You know what I mean? Because there's not a pile of transgender fighters out there trying to take over leagues, but there's a few of them that do exist. And when it's a transition from male to female, and you can still maintain the same body structure and bone structure as a man in a sport that is directly based. I mean, like, you can argue technique and whatnot does make a big difference, and the smaller fighter can all that. But fundamentally, if you're evenly matched, if someone is bigger and stronger and faster, and you're all evenly matched otherwise, bigger, stronger, faster is always going to win if you've got the same level of training.
Especially kickboxing.
Grappling,
exactly,
when you start talking that,
somebody.
right? Well, again, this is the argument people try to make to say, like, why it's, well, no, you can even the playing field, but it's like in the practicality of it,
then
and
why
the reality
why
of
have
it.
gendered sports at all?
Well, right, exactly.
So here's an example. Like, across the board, it doesn't matter. Like, there was a Connecticut track meet where the girls division was won by the first and second place were two transgendered women and or young women. So I think, and this is happening more and more and more, although you don't really see a lot of, I don't know the proper terminology, so sue me if I'm wrong, the female to male powerlifters.
Sure.
You don't see a lot of female to male MMA
Well, you know
fighters.
what? But it's interesting you made that transition, or that you made the first one of the powerlifting, because if anywhere, that's where I think you would see it.
Really?
Yeah, because
I don't think they'd be competitive on the same wavelength.
Well, honestly, female powerlifters do, especially once they start hitting their 40s and they start producing more testosterone than they do estrogen. They actually can really move some serious weight, because
on the same playing field as a man.
It's all weight, right? You know what I mean? So with the way they're built, like a lot of them, their lower bodies are much stronger than a man's of comparable size and weight. So if you're at the same weight class and you're all built similarly, you don't have to punch and kick each other, then that is an honest comparison you can make. And
I guess for body weight.
And with powerlifting too, you would get, just from what I've seen, it does seem if there is a transition from female to male, a lot of times that body type even that does kind of do well in body lifting is generally the one that more easily transitions, if you understand what I mean.
Well, let's say you're a 140-pound person.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what gender you identify as or what biological sex that you have, or are we just going to go by what weight you have? I think in some sports that's valid.
Yes.
Like
if it's not like physical confrontation contact, Like if it's powerlifting, if it's CrossFit, if it's that kind of stuff, that you can't tell me that there isn't. If there's a woman who's 150 pounds and a guy who's 150 pounds, and they're both doing those CrossFit competitions and stuff, that it's not a comparable
Or triathlon,
thing.
swimming,
Because
all of that.
there's going to be benefits for them too with flexibility and whatnot. The guys generally
But that
don't
being
have.
said, okay, now let's say in a combat sport, why wouldn't we put a 140-pound woman versus a 140-pound
because it's a
man?
combat sport.
Why?
That's the difference. Right?
Okay, now even in combat,
again,
why would we not
well,
do that?
And because, okay, if you want to talk like physiology, from what I understand, like just even bone density and muscle density alone, it's going to make you a harder
Hitter?
thing, a harder, more dense thing,
A harder target?
A man's hand and arm is going to be a harder, more dense weapon than a woman's hand and
Okay,
arm.
yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, yeah.
So at that level, already you're at a disadvantage, right? And that could be enough of it alone, because otherwise, why don't we just always compete men against women in every other sport, right?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the gender activists would say, let's do away with all gendered sports. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of competition across the board. I think I've made that fairly clear. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Again, you're not coming at this as a guy who's like, no, I have a real genuine passion for MMA. You're like, you just find this interesting because what is a fair thing to do? And I think that's what's a fair thing to do is eventually it's going to transition, because right now, again, like there's not 50 Fallon Foxes out there running rampant through women's MMA leagues. You know what I mean?
There's a fair amount in different sports, though.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. Is it starting to become a thing, right? So right now
Well,
it's not. So maybe there becomes because they've adjusted weight classes in the past, and you adjust rule sets and you do things differently as sports evolve. Boxing isn't the same as it was 100 years ago. Then there's maybe some evolution that comes along in there. Then maybe there does become another league that is, you know what, if you want to compete here, it doesn't matter what your gender is, you can just do this. This is the fluid league. This is whatever it is. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I don't know enough. It's so new.
I was on
to
this.
me.
I was in a civil conversation
Okay.
with one of my trans friends from Montreal, and actually another friend from England, and he's pretty right wing, and she's obviously very left wing. She's trans,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of the centrist here, and because he's like, I don't think that transgendered women should fight or should compete in women's sports. And her idea is like, why not? And I'm like, well, you got to wonder, why do we ban testosterone doping or steroids in competition?
Yeah.
Because it makes physiological changes that give you an
it's an
advantage.
unfair advantage. Yeah.
And at the
Absolutely.
same time,
Having
I'm
that
like,
much more
we're living
testosterone.
in complicated times. I'd love to have more anyway, we're living in complicated times. I'm like, who knows? Maybe we need to have a specific transgender divisions for some of these sports, and then she retorted, which I think is a false equivalency. Well, why don't we do race then? And I'm like,
Wow.
well, it's a false equivalency, and I don't think it's the same thing.
Exactly, right? And that's the interesting thing that a lot of groups on the left like to do is they clump themselves in with other maligned groups. Because no, I'm maligned, they're maligned, and if you malign them, and it's in a way, well, I can claim I'm hurt as well, because if you malign them, well, you're maligning me, and because we're the same. And it's like, but not every situation's the same. There are, again, that's also groups that celebrate the individual as well, right? We're all individuals and we're all beautiful. Well, then stop treating yourself as part of a monolith then. Like,
Yeah,
why not
collective.
treat each of these individually encounters instead of, oh, I'm just talking to another guy whose opinion I already know about. Why not just treat it as an individual encounter, right?
So this was what led me to leave Facebook. Basically, it started off, a guy said cancel culture is valid. And I say, well, that's sticky, especially if you're saying that somebody needs to be canceled just because somebody considers them insensitive. And then I'm like, okay, here's an example. The conversation about Fallon Fox in MMA, everybody was screaming that Joe Rogan should be canceled because of that conversation. Boom, this person pops up and starts calling me a bigot for posting it. And you and I know what
you're
you're
having
all
the
about.
conversation.
Exactly. The conversation we just had, because we are not part of a community that is automatically bigoted, because according to this individual and others in the same camp, people who are not part of a given community should not have an opinion on how that community governs themselves, which I find bullshit.
Well, and that's more exclusionary stuff. I thought the goal was inclusion. I thought the goal was equality, not separation, not discrimination. Like that was the point. And again, we talked about this, I don't know how many times, these pendulum swings at a societal level where you get these groups that were maligned. And I understand that. Like, if you were someone who was constantly maligned throughout your life, when you see what you think is the same argument coming at you again, you get your hackles up and you go, well, I know where this guy's coming from. But that's fine. Then eventually you have to work past that and get to a point of, like, you can't be the person now doing the maligning. You can't be the one now segregating and telling people what they can think and do, because it was done to you for so long that now you've got the power. they see that, and that's that weird pendulum swing that unfortunately does happen, because it's like, it was well-meaning enough. We want equality. Wait a minute, we can have more than equality. I can even tell everybody else what to do because of my maligned position.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's what I'm going to do. I have that power that was taken away from me for so long, and no one ever let me have. Now I can have it. But the problem with this is, now we're getting to be a couple generations into gender identity and gay and trans rights and that sort of thing, where it's getting to be more and more mainstream. So you're starting to have people now in like the current younger generations who never lived in that world. They never lived in the world
In an oppressive
where it was
environment.
overt, it was obvious, where people weren't allowed to be corrected when they said something inappropriate. You know what I mean? And so now they think that they still belong to that. If they are of that group, they go, well, no, but I have all this history behind me of other people. But it's like, you personally have never been oppressed or maligned, so you don't understand what that looks like when it's there. And then
It's
you
a theory
think,
to you.
Exactly. And then you think anything that looks like that thing that you've heard about, well, that's it. That's the thing I heard about in the stories they told me about the old days when they drag you by a pickup truck, and then, which, not to say that doesn't still happen, but you know what I mean? But that's where you get
I know
to.
what a hate crime is.
Exactly.
It's words
Yeah.
I hate.
Yes, there you go. There you go. It went from a lynching to I don't like your opinion on. I don't like the ethnicity of the actor in this movie now, because it's not. And again, actors, they're acting. Hey, their ethnicity isn't correct to the role they're playing. I know. Why would it be though? They're acting. If you did that, it's a documentary. Then
It's
if you
based
just get
off of a
people that that's
comic
what they
book,
do,
buddy.
you know. And I understand trying to make it more accurate, and I totally understand trying, because for a year it was, people were blackface, brownface. We don't need to hire a bunch of Native Americans to play Native Americans. We just get a bunch of whoever, we'll draw them whatever color we want, right?
Yeah.
So I totally understand trying to find a balance of that. But that, again, isn't what we're talking about now.
Well, okay, so to just rewind a bit, the idea that if you aren't part of the trans community, you don't have a right to have an opinion on trans issues. Or if you're not part of the indigenous community, you don't have a right to have an opinion on indigenous issues, seems as flawed as me saying, well, if you aren't a member of the white male community, you don't have a right to have an opinion on white male issues.
Yeah.
That's bullshit, because I thought we were supposed to be involved in a dialogue.
Well, and you know what?
And
Sorry.
education, and compassion. Hey, let's educate each other and help each other, as opposed to, fuck you, bigot.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Well, and everybody has opinions. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I don't agree with that opinion. Okay, cool. Well, then have some inclusion, have some education, have exactly what you're talking about, so that people are part of it. And then it's because I think a lot of times when someone's asking a question, it's seen as, oh, well, you just don't understand because you don't want to. When you're like, no, legitimately, why is this like this? Why do you think that's okay?
Or
and
how
they
can
go, well, you're just attacking my philosophy. And it's like, no, I don't understand why you think it's okay. So I'm trying to understand by asking it.
How
But by
can we
asking it, I
solve
look
this
like a bigot.
problem here? Like if I approach something and I say, well, here's an issue I have with this situation. How can we solve this problem? You're a bigot.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to
Yeah.
talk about any
What's
of
the
it.
problem, huh? That it doesn't fit in with your cis norm?
Yeah, because you're a middle-aged white man.
Yeah.
Write it off because you've had no oppression in your life. And I'm like, well, man, okay.
Yeah.
There's a couple scenarios here, and this is like true stories. And an individual I know, okay, he is. Oh no, okay, I'm rewinding that. To me, externally, from an average person looking at a family, you've got male, female, 2 boys, and the guy has 2 or 3 girlfriends. Wow, that's a pretty privileged picket fence lifestyle, right? But suddenly, well, the husband identifies as being non-binary and bisexual, even though don't really ever see any male partners, right? Non-binary, so they're now part of the trans community, and 2 of his girlfriends identify as non-binary, even though they are, in a heterosexual biological relationship. This privileged individual, let's say the biological male, is suddenly part of a marginalized community where he can be a social justice warrior because he is so oppressed. Now, dude, you're a white middle-aged male with a wife and 2 girlfriends. How fucking privileged are you to pretend you're oppressed because you slapped the term non-binary on yourself? And there's the other.
Hey, this is if this was 20, 30 years ago, and this guy kept this secret and then came out and then was, this is how I am, and I've had secret girlfriends, and I've had no, you're living out in the open, living like this now. This is what culture is now. This is what is accepted within it. And then to go, I'm a victim now. Well, no, that's an accepted thing. People have no issue with you being that now.
And to scream about how oppressed you are when there are real problems in this world.
An impression you just adopted.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I know transgendered people. that have transitioned from male to female to male. And I know legitimate non-binary individuals who say, I really can't identify as one or the other. And you meet them and you know. But we're also living in a time, and this is like, I'm not trying to be condescending, but when there's a lot of people co-opting transgender and non-binary identities in order to belong to a movement, in order to belong to a marginalized minority, and basically the only reason, because it's not really who they are in their heart of hearts, there's no inner conflict. It's essentially to advance a political narrative where they can other people and say, you're an oppressive influence because I'm the victim here, and I'm coming from a point of
They need to join a finger pointing group of some sort.
Yeah.
Where do I point the finger?
And I'm like, you know, I'll absolutely I'll stand in the middle of my trans friends and a real bigot.
Yeah.
But as an ally, that's my job. I will do that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to.
Don't be so violent and aggressive while you're beating that bigot, though.
Well,
Don't stop that guy from attacking me with such vulgarity.
but I'm not going to stand in between anybody who just decides to slap a label on themselves willy-nilly for any reason they feel like. Because I've been on the forums, my kids in this community, and I've been on the forums that she's involved in, and I've watched young people flip-flop, have conversations with each other on which pronoun they want to use. I don't want to be trendy, but I want to use this, and I don't know if I'm going to be judged for using this. Who the fuck are you in real life? How about you figure that out first and run with it?
Right.
You know, and if that's who you really are, I'm going to fucking support you 110%.
Maybe that's just how edgy kids are now, though, that I'm thinking about it.
It's the new punk rock.
Exactly, right? Like, that's like, you know what? Fuck music, fuck art, fuck whatever.
This
you know
is-
what? I'm going to
yeah.
fuck with who I am. What's the
I-
base core of me, you know? And
I think that's it.
If you look at it from kind of like just a fun, hey, life is fun, just kind of way of looking at things. If it's a game, why not, man? You know what I mean? Why not just play it like that? Why not just decide, yeah, you know what? This is what I feel like today. This is what I am.
That's great if that's your bubble.
Yeah.
Now your bubble can be your bubble.
Yeah.
But when your bubble starts telling other people that they're oppressing you if they don't respect what's happening in your bubble,
right?
I don't necessarily agree that.
That's the issue I have with
especially-
all of this. Like, anybody who starts to, like, it doesn't really matter what the reason is, but if you start to point fingers at people to be like, well, you're not letting me, whatever it is,
Influence what you
because
do.
of your opinion, well, that's just not true. It's just not true. No one's stopping you because of their opinion. And if somebody's physically stopping you from doing something, by all means, that should be a bit of an issue. But if somebody just doesn't like something you like, that's not the same as them stopping you from doing it.
Okay, so if I live in a vegan bubble.
Yeah,
Me and my
exactly.
partner, we live in a vegan bubble. It's our ethics. It's what we really honestly believe. In our hearts of hearts, we don't agree with what happens to create meat. Now, if I went around saying, you're a murderer, you're a cannibal,
Right.
you're a participant in atrocity, that's a Holocaust.
Yeah.
To anybody that wants to listen,
Yeah.
oh my God, how much of a fucking
Well,
imposing
and you know what's crazy is-
imperialist attitude do I have to push my shit on you constantly?
Yeah, and that is
from
some
a
imperialism,
position
right?
of moral superiority.
Yeah.
No, this is my ethics. This is who I am. This is what I do, and you do you.
Yeah.
Because I also realize that I live in reality.
Yeah.
That 99% of the world, well, maybe not quite that high, but a lot of the world doesn't share my value system, and they don't need to. If they get there eventually, that's great. And as much as I want it to be a grand crusade where I wave this flag and
Yeah.
I march headlong into the fray, you know, with sword and shield, it's not going to happen. What you can do is put it out there, but I'm not going to start screaming about it and trying to shove it down people's throats. And there isn't even a word yet, because this is a new the activism, the cultural change is happening. There isn't even a word yet for the type of bullying and pressure that this new generation is putting on average people.
Sure.
Like, we don't even have a word for it. Just like we don't know how transgender people are going to compete.
It's almost like a forced social evolution.
For
you know what I
social
mean?
collectivism.
But if this is their picture, or their
Is it a
vision of the
natural
future-
evolution if
Well,
it's
I don't know what
forced?
it is, but I'm just saying, like, if this is what they
Yeah.
picture the evolution being, where we go from a world where people are oppressed, where everyone has equality, and we all have voices, and we're all this, that, and this is how we get there, by making sure everyone is on board right fucking now.
And by denigrating you if you disagree, and I can
Well-
make fun of your gender and your age, and I can be
Yeah.
ageist, ableist, a gatekeeper if it's in
Yeah.
the benefit of my social justice.
As long as you can argue you were maligned at some point because of who you were, you can, right? Because, well, no, it was what was done to me. This is how I was treated.
Victimhood is powerful. In
It's
that way.
crazy, man, right? And to me, in my mind, that's why you do the opposite. When you're victimized by somebody, you don't continue to perpetuate that. When you get the opportunity, you go, holy shit, that's what was done
I'm
to
gonna
me.
be the bully
I
now.
don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that thing.
But we don't have a word for this type of bullying, cancel culture, dogpiling.
Yeah, it's all very new,
social
right?
assassination.
And like, I guess like stuff like this has kind of always existed, in different ways. Like, I mean, if there was,
Well, it's a new technology.
That's
social
it.
media.
That's the biggest difference, right? Is how quickly information can get out there, where it's like an instantaneous. You don't have to go to the cotillion and talk to the lords and ladies and get everybody all. Well, no, let's all make sure that we get Wilbur out of the next commission. We don't want him in there. Now it's just like tweet out and you're done. See you later.
But what we do have historically that we could compare this to is accusing somebody of being a witch. And do you need proof? No, they need to prove they aren't a witch. And the crowd gathers them up. They take them to the dunking spot. You're fucked if you do, and you're fucked if you don't. Now, let's say hypothetically, and I'm not victim blaming, okay? Somebody gets accused. I think he's a piece of shit, and I believe the accusations. But let's say Marilyn Manson. Okay, somebody gets accused.
Sorry, the least surprising thing I've heard maybe
the
in my entire
Satanist
existence.
that sings about violence.
Because it was on a big show, right? That's why he did it since his entire fucking life. Hey,
Yeah,
it's
his
just
entire
art.
life is
It's
around
just
this
art.
stuff. So yeah, I dated Gigi Allen, and it wasn't fucking. He spit on my mom.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I me too, Gigi Allen.
Yeah.
But so okay, now in a situation like that, not him, but all it takes is for an accusation to fly. And his label drops him and all this other stuff. And like the TV shows that he's on, boom, 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 boom. Because they don't want to lose money.
Right.
It's an economic thing. Or the chick who was in Mandalorian, she had some
Gene
sort
Crown,
of she said some sort of bullshit about, like, when I say woman, I mean a biological woman. That's basically what it started as. Yeah. And then everybody dogpiled her super hard to the point where Disney's like, okay, we're going to fucking re-examine our relationship with you. And she's like, holy shit, being a Republican is like being a Jew in Germany in the 30s. Which,
yeah, they all just lost their contracts and their
so there was a
sponsorship
real
deals, right?
big step back after that.
I didn't know that was the second thing she said.
Yeah,
She
that
said
was
something
her
else
doubling
recently.
down on that
And
one.
again, in my head, I'm like, well, she's an ex-cage fighter and a shitty actress. What did you assholes think she thought?
So-
what did you think she thought?
Well, that's a good point. And like that she's a cage. I didn't know she was a cage fighter. That
Gina
makes
Carano
sense.
was like the pioneer in women's MMA, man.
Oh, I didn't know that.
She was the biggest star before there was big stars.
That's very,
She was
very
pre-Ronda
interesting.
Rousey, yep.
So, okay, these people, they're dumb. Maybe they're not the smartest. Maybe they're not the most polished around the edges. But instead of educating them, instead of treating them with compassion, boom, you're unemployed. Boom, withdrawing your money. Boom, you're pushed to the outskirts. Now, what is that going to cause? You talk about the pendulum swing, right? When you increasingly censor and accuse, you're a bigot automatically. You haven't tried to educate somebody. Well, actually, here's the science that explains the 6 different genders, like chromosomally, or the situations that can cause a person's brain to not match up with their body. Maybe you'd be interested in reading about that.
Well, and
it's like, fuck you, bigot.
And for me, my thing of it is, especially if you're detached from it, like if it's a family member or a close friend and they think the earth is flat or they think some other crazy shit, by all means, have the fucking conversation with them. Get heated with them. Strangers on the fucking internet you have no dog in the fight with. Who gives a shit what the fuck Gina Carano thinks about anything, first off, right? Like, why are we upset or worked up about it? Why are we holding her accountable at all? What the fuck does she do? Pretend to be a space fucking mercenary?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand looking to someone like that and going like, oh, well, her opinion really matters, so we should make sure that she's held accountable, when it's like, no, she seems like kind of a dummy, and then she said a dummy thing. Okay. That's how long you need to listen to her then, I guess. She doesn't have fucking influence.
As almost a new bullying.
It is.
Where
it is,
the
right?
people that traditionally have felt on the outside finally have a little bit of power and watch us run with it.
Yep.
And
this is Revenge of the Nerds.
Yes, Revenge of the Nerds, 100%. There was
which is justifiable.
No,
sometimes
well, to a
nerds need
degree.
revenge, baby.
Okay, here's a scenario that I put to my mom and my ex-wife and my kid, right? And I said, okay, here's a hypothetical. Let's say that we even everything, and we gave the opportunity for 100,000 Congolese child soldiers and Rhodesian or Congolese or, not Rhodesian, but, like the child soldiers, these war bands that have nothing, no water, no food, no shelter. And we put them out Saskatoon. We put them outside Saskatoon and said, there's wealth, there's affluence, there's privilege. Would you want them on your doorstep, taking out their revenge for the oppression that our country put on them? How would you like to be treated by these people? And it started with like, boy, I would love to chop the head off of these billionaires that fuck us over. And like, I'm like, so you're in a billionaire's mansion with like 150 of your buddies. What are you going to do? March them out onto the lawn and shoot them? You're going to torture them? You're going to do what? Oh, my daughter, she's like, I would just enjoy his stuff and share it with everybody else. And I'm like, well, that's cute, kid. So,
Communist.
yeah, we're right. Well, to a degree. But these people that are bent on revenge and canceling and silencing and punishing, would you want to be punished for your privilege by the people without privilege in your own community?
No.
Would you want to be judged with the same degree of vitriol that you're judging others? No, but it's an option. It is an option, because most of the people that are talking at these high levels, like of theory and intellectual kind of like semantics, and they're playing word games like, I don't like that pronoun you used, like that shit. They've never been on the ground with the people that are like, holy fuck, it's minus 30 and I don't have windows in the shack that I'm living in, and my water's frozen, and like, I have no job and no prospects.
No.
Like, they're coming from a certain vantage point of privilege, and they think they're oppressed.
Yeah.
As opposed to the people that are at the bottom that are like, holy fuck, I'm barely making ends meet. In fact, I'm not making ends meet, but I'm barely surviving. I wish I had anything at all. And these people are like, my pronoun? You're offending me, and you need to be canceled because I'm on Twitter and Facebook and
I'd
able
say those
to...
are not equivalent levels.
It's
of
not
oppression.
equivalent, and you are
those
not
are
oppressed.
not equivalent levels.
And well, I guess that's just it, because I'm like, you're not oppressed. In fact, you've got a better job and a better education than me. You've got like a university liberal arts degree, and I'm a guy who just had to work my way up from the fucking ground.
But even for them, like if this is a woman, they might still also be going, yeah, and even with all that, I still make 15% less than what my male coworkers do for the same fucking job.
Well,
you
in
know
some
what I mean?
trades,
Like,
or in
it's
some
still,
businesses,
well,
yeah.
and all, man, it's
Tattooing? No.
It's well, okay, fair enough. Maybe
No.
you don't see it in tattooing, but
No.
like even in some place as highly regulated as banking, I saw it firsthand, where you would assume that it's all just similar pay structures and scales, and this is what this position gets, and that's what that gets, and it's all structured. And nope. If you don't got the right parts, you can still make $20,000 a year less than the one who does.
Then there's tweaking that needs to happen.
Oh no, absolutely,
But-
right? That's my whole thing about this, right? Is then let's get into those positions and women and shut that shit the fuck down. Balance it out. Find us a balance.
No, I'm all about eliminating hate speech and violent neo-Nazis and people giving people a platform to encourage violence against identifiable minorities for no reason other than hatred. I'm all about that. Deplatform fucking terrorism. Okay, I'll go there. Deplatform terrorism and those that advocate terrorism. Now, when we start going, well, I want to get rid of hate speech. Cool. I want to get rid of racism. Well, yeah, who doesn't? I want to get rid of sexism and homophobia. Yeah, of course. Transphobia, then ableism, then classism, then ageism, body shaming, victim blaming, speciesism. Like we're lookism. Like it starts being okay, so I get it. You want to have a unified playing field where we live in an imaginary land where nobody's any different. And everybody's absolutely equal. And anybody who's a little taller needs to be hammered down, and anybody who's a little lower needs to be lifted up, and so we're all unified. That's not reality. There is going to be stupid people. There will always be stupid people out there.
See, I think maybe we're seeing that differently too, though, because I do see that as just equal opportunity. That's not. We all have to be made of the same level. That's like we all get the same starting point, or we all get the same sort of leg up that the other person does, whatever the fuck it is.
Okay, I don't want to
And
talk
then
about
if we
two
choose
different
to
things.
take that, that's not the same thing.
Well, it depends. Okay. If somebody is saying that a person needs to be canceled because they're a bigot, if they've said something that they consider ableist or blah, 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 whatever the reason is, I think that you just said a classist thing or you were just transphobic. That's not equality anymore. You're not encouraging equality. You want to shut down anybody you perceive as being a bigot. Because in the end, who really defines what that hatred is or what that prejudice is? The most easily offended, the most fragile are the ones that say that you're a toxic person. The people that should probably be in therapy because they're that fragile are the ones, you hurt me. Well, where's that middle ground? Like, these are two extremes. And the people that are super fragile saying anything that is a perceived offense is obviously a hate crime. If you mispronoun me or if you question the validity of this element of a treaty right, you're a bigot automatically. Now, that's, I think, different than saying, hey, we're all going to have equal opportunities, because I absolutely support equal opportunities, but I don't support the increasing... I can't figure out the right word. The increasing movement towards lesser and lesser infractions being treated with greater and greater harshness or greater and greater aggression.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I absolutely support.
and I think that, and what you're seeing is that's them trying to get there through punishment. That's them trying to get to their utopian view by punishing everyone who doesn't see it the same way, right? Whereas that's probably what's happening. But I think when I think of that view myself, I don't punishment isn't part of it. You know what I mean? It's not about bringing someone down. It is just about let's make it equal. Let's make it as close to as an even playing field as we can with the things like. And I'm talking about, like, let's not worry about everybody having running water. Let's not worry about roof overhead. Let's not worry about food in our bellies. Let's not worry about health. I'm not talking about let's all get a car. Let's all get the same size house. I'm saying like let's make it so at least we're not. Some of us aren't totally fucked, and some of us have so much we never know what to do.
I
with it.
absolutely.
Let's find that common ground, and then that's when I think that world starts to exist because there's a lot more. Things we have in common then, and a lot less things that make people do the crazy fucking things they have to do to survive. And I don't even mean just paying your bills, like just I got to get drugs so I can survive because I can't fucking deal with who I am. That doesn't exist as much in that world. When you don't have to if you're the utopian vision of mine of a socialist world where you've got housing and shit. It might not be the nicest, but everybody's got some and it's looked after and you're part of a community and you grow up in it. Like instead of like even government housing now, a lot of times people are shifted around in it. You don't necessarily get to stay in the same house the whole time when you're growing up, so you don't get a sense of community doing that. Nothing ever becomes permanent for you. So stuff like that, which again for me isn't a big overreaching overhaul of the system. It's just these are subtle adjustments to get us back towards that middle ground.
Unfortunately, the loudest voices tend to be the extreme fringes.
Sure. Oh, absolutely, right?
And they're trying to use the extreme fringe examples of our economic system as justification for their stuff.
Well, and you know what? Until recently, honestly, I felt like either of those extreme ends of those spectrums could never get what they wanted. They could only get closer to it. And that's why I always thought they had value. That's why you needed crazy right wing, you need crazy left wing, so the middle can hear both that and then go, okay, well, maybe we got to move this way a little bit because that's as much as they'll ever move, right? And then sometimes if the core of whatever the crazy is has got a little more universal benefit for everybody else around them, even if it's the crazy, if this one's chakras and crystals, but it's for the greater good, and this one's oil fields, but it's all for me and it's going to fuck everybody else. Well, eventually you're probably going to see a societal shift towards the one that is for the better good, even though there's still a lot pulling on this side and lots of reasons, practical and reality and right now that you have to. There's still going to be that societal push to that because that's got the core good to it.
Yes, I agree. I agree that there needs to be a societal shift towards compassion.
And I think we'll get there as we get more education and more technology, because technology a lot of times alleviates the things that keep us separate, like the water, the heat, the education, that kind of shit, right?
Now I also see, and then like that's funny because my conversations, I tend to criticize the left. I am a leftist.
I know,
but I tend to criticize the extremists on the left because when I left Facebook, I felt pushed 2 or 3 degrees further to the right now because of the tone and the attitude and the content of the activism that I had to deal with as an ally from another quote ally. I'm like, I'm not like you. I don't want to be like you because they want compassion with a lack of rational logic, without a balance,
there's no practicality.
Well, they don't want anything that contends the narrative. Anything that questions what their dogma is, they're so convinced they're right. Just that they're just as convinced they're right as the right-wing racists that are like white supremacists, how they're right and everybody's like, oh, they're wrong. So are these radical leftists that are like, we're right and everybody else is wrong, and if you disagree with us, you're a bigot and you're a fascist. The fact that I've been called a bigot and a fascist because I say, what about this? And they're like, fuck you, we know what you're all about. I'm like, no, you don't. Because if you did read my feed, you would know that I'm actually a pretty staunch leftist that believes in social programs and equality and anti-racist and anti-homophobia. But I questioned you, and suddenly I became the enemy. Interesting that you have such you're so imbalanced on that far fringe.
Well, right. And if anybody's secure in the way they feel about anything, they don't react like that. If I feel threatened, I react loud and violently. If I'm comfortable and I don't give a fuck, I ain't gonna react like that. You know what I mean? Because I'm comfortable with where I am and what I'm doing. That's the a hit dog barks, right? You know what I mean? Like that's what that is, right? I'm not really that comfortable, not sure, so I have to actively defend it all the time to make sure I reinforce that. No, I'm doing this.
So another element about social media specifically is that I've experienced, because when I was there, I experienced it, and I've seen it firsthand, when people are involved with an echo chamber. You end up being friends with people with similar values. You join groups that support your value system. You all start making fun of the same enemies and the same thought patterns, and you push yourselves up with your own thought patterns and your own values, and you slowly get pushed into this little tiny exclusive insular clique of people that agree with you, a confirmation bias. And anybody outside your confirmation bias is the enemy. They're the other, and you don't listen because you know what they're all about.
Well, and you saw this again with the last 4 years of Fox News.
Yes.
That was
Or CBC.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, no, it's still pushing the narrative for sure. I just don't know if it's.
I tend to agree with that narrative,
but yeah.
See, and that's just it. We don't know if it's equitable. Just because I agree with one doesn't mean the other one doesn't have valid points.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. And I've been trying, because I went through a phase, like I'm sure everybody else did, where you guys started getting people that were annoying you on your Facebook feed. You're like, fucking block. You're done. You're gone. But now I've tried to, unless it's something that I'm just like, I can't deal with that anymore. I'll try to keep it on, because like there's still somebody I have some sort of connection with if they're in my Facebook fucking thing, right? There's still some friend or family or whatever, and it helps me to understand where the fuck they're coming from when I see stuff like that, because then when I do talk to them in real life and I get blindsided by it in the conversation, I'm like, what the fuck, you think that? Where I'm eased into it and going, okay, and that's why they think that. And I get that's how they get there, but at the same time, that's kind of a lie, and they're kind of misunderstanding that, and that's a misinterpretation of what this is,
So yeah, if
it helps me
if you say that to the
myself.
riggers, if you say, hey man, that's kind of a lie, who paid for your science that you're basing, oh, that came from an oil company, it was totally sponsored. Oh, that's fake news, you're a communist.
Oh, sorry, I say that to myself when I'm reading it.
Oh, okay.
I don't try and say it to them, because exactly, you're gonna have this conversation, right? They'll act like if it's something they get called out on, it's just some fucking thing on Facebook. I don't know, I just posted it. But if it's something they do believe it can be the stupidest little meme, and they'll get, well, no, I got my 15 points that I got off of some other right-leaning fucking Facebook thing that's ultimately funded by Russian bots to keep pushing our oil out to some other country, whatever the fuck the goal is.
Or conversely, if I question anything in I'm just going to go with the trans one because that was what had me leave Facebook.
Sure.
If I question anything, here's all of the propaganda field I can pull from that says that I've got a whole checklist of issues I have with the community, but then I also am told there's no debate. You are not allowed to debate trans identity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not debating the identity for those people that are legitimate. What about all the fakes? What about the people that are just claiming it for oppression or political points? Do they count? Can a person transition at any time for any reason, anytime, anywhere? No? Well, who can't? How do we define what's real and what isn't? There is none. So we're basically, do what you want. You're now all marginalized. I could be Autumn's dad. Or Autumn's mom. There's a South Park skit show, and it's called if you look it up on YouTube, South Park Strong Woman song, and it's a Randy Macho Man Savage changes his name to Heather Swanson and starts entering strongman competitions and MMA competitions. The strongest woman ever. And then anybody who questions what's going on? Transphobe.
Yeah.
And it's almost there because the narrative's getting pushed so far away from reality, where this dogma, it's where's the litmus test for whether this is valid or not.
And again, these and the real life scenarios of these, there are getting to be more of them, but they're in the minority. And then it does attach itself to a whole other group of people who are no, we're valid, we're here for a reason, and now we feel fucking maligned because we feel attacked because of this. Not even 3% of our population is involved in this conversation, not even necessarily being attacked or maligned, just trying to figure out how to define how to deal with it.
Well, I think the radicals and the people that are mentally ill and the traumatized and the politicos are doing a real disservice to legitimate transgender and non-binary individuals who are actually living that experience.
It's a soundbite and a quick shot for the cameras, right? You're in a room of people and they're going to do their quick little thing, and we're looking at everybody. Grab me the wheelchair guy real quick.
Grab me the guy from GameStop that's screaming at I'm a man.
Yeah,
you remember that guy?
Yes.
Then the right picks up on that individual.
And this is what they all are over there.
This represents the trans
Every person
community.
that says that they're leftist, this is who they are.
This is Antifa.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yes.
So, and that's perfect example. The right, anybody on the left now is Antifa. It's such an easy, the same way anybody who's right of basically, or anybody who's left of hunting the homeless has to be Antifa. And
Well, and
on
I
the
love
left,
that. I love that they've co-opted Antifa to make
Yeah,
it its own little
anything.
thing. It's just
Anything.
no, it's an Antifa. It's an Antifa. Do you understand that means anti-fascist? Correct, folks. That's what we're
Yes.
here for. The anti-fascists. Fuck's sakes.
Can
no,
you show
you're
me
an
on the
Antifa.
doll
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the Antifa touched
Yeah,
you?
yeah, exactly.
Like,
Is there an
fuck
Antifa in this room now?
But
Fuck
at the
me.
same time,
Yeah.
on the left, anybody that contends a narrative
Yeah.
is
You're a
automatically a bigot.
Yeah.
And so where are
Everybody else that exists in the middle, which is the
and
majority
all
of
the
the population.
centrists are like,
Yeah.
okay, so there's this political guy, his name, I forget his name, Overton, and he came up with the Overton window. So you've got the spectrum left and right. And if you are somewhere on the right, there's a circle around your parameters of acceptable reality and politics,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So if I'm slightly to the left, then my like a real hard socialist is kind of extreme, and a fiscal conservative is kind of extreme.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But any further right than that, no, I can't even deal with. Gotcha. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
a radical.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
a fucking out to lunch.
Yeah.
So what I see is happening online is these people are segregating to left and right, and their Overton windows don't even there's no overlap anymore.
Yeah.
So the right says anybody over there is a fucking communist, and the left is anybody over there is a fucking fascist.
Yeah.
When they're not. They're calling centrist leftists
Yeah.
bigots.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, that's like people calling like your Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer's leftists. Hey, I'm like, those are the centrist, big money, billionaire,
Oh, really?
corporate Wall Street fucking politicians as they come. They're as ingrained as they come, and they're leftists. They're
leftists.
Marxists.
Yeah.
Come on.
So I really don't. Okay, so another one, and watching young kids, teenagers, screaming about things they don't understand. Like my daughter's generation, my daughter's group of friends. I see it all the time. I get it. It's popular. Black Lives Matter. ICE, fuck ICE. Cool. Do you know why? Let's have the conversation, child, about why ICE is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because there should be no borders?
Yeah.
Like, is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that on a grand macrocosmic level.
Hey, but,
Yes.
and how many people when we went to high school had Che Guevara t-shirts on too? Though?
Yeah,
you know what
right.
I mean. Like that's what you do when you're a teenager, right? You find a fucking thing and attach yourself to it. But again, I do see, because especially with you, a lot of it when we talk about it is the trans thing, where that becomes a thing where it's like, okay, well, you're not just wearing a t-shirt or even getting a tattoo. You're starting to change something very fundamental about the core of who you are and how people will perceive you, and you're doing it when you're 12, 13, 14 years old. That gets to be a little bit more, it's not the same as I was really into emo and now I'm more into prog rock.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an equality.
My rebellion
but
at
that's how
13.
teenagers treat shit, because they're fucking teenagers, man. That's how I treated shit. Nothing mattered. There was no tomorrow.
Well, my rebellion when I was 13 is combat boots, a safety pin through my ear, and Dead Kennedys albums.
Yeah.
And I was a leftist as far as Jello Biafra's indoctrination would show me. and so here I am at an early, and that's what's fucked. All these social justice warriors right now. I'm like, I remember being 15 and having the same opinions.
Yeah.
But you're 45.
Yeah.
Yeah. And give you a few years and a few years on the ground, maybe go through addiction and find out get in trouble with the police a few times and meet gangbangers, you might have a wider view of what reality is like, buddy.
Yeah.
But as long as you're up there in lofty world where, I've got it all cased and everybody is so right. This is another element. Everybody's 100% correct.
See, and none of that bothers me. I don't give a fuck if everybody thinks they're right. It's again it's when they start to use that to attack. Well, not only am I right, then that makes you wrong.
Yeah.
And because you're wrong, I either take something away from you, because even just you apologizing for it or coming to terms with it, that's not enough. You can't go on a tour and tell everybody you're sorry and write a book. We got to take a bunch of things away from you.
Yeah,
and it
you have
doesn't
to be
matter if
punished.
it's equivalent. Doesn't matter if there's balance to it. Doesn't matter. Again, I just think in politics, like Al Franken getting pulled out of his position in government for a picture from 20 years ago of him fake air honking somebody's boobs while they were sleeping on, and it was like a coworker or whatever while they were on the plane. Still, inappropriate, not something he should have fucking done. But he resigned his position in government for it when it came out about years ago. He's like, holy fuck, I hadn't even realized that picture was around. I'd forgot about it altogether. Whatever the fuck it was, because it wasn't a thing. He didn't touch her even. He just air honked, which whatever. That's neither here nor there. And then you got the president who has twice now not been impeached all the way through because of a Senate that decided they're gonna sit and sleep through the fucking proceedings and just vote however they want. There's no balance to a lot of that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Although my anxiety has been down significantly, Pat, since there's been no Trump in office. Honestly, since Biden came in, because I have not been panicking every day. Okay, what the fuck new terror is there now?
Yeah.
I've just noticed myself being so much more relaxed, and now when I do check in on stuff, I'm just like, oh well, fuck, how about that? Like, oh, they think he's going to go back into power on the 6th of March. Sure thing, guys.
Yeah, I don't want to hold my breath because the impeachment didn't go through for 4 years and watching the rise of a new fascist party happening down there. But I'm happy there was no civil war.
Yeah,
I'm
you were correct on that. There was no outbreak.
I was you got me worried a bit, but like, I'm happy that nothing went down.
Yeah.
But that being said, the new Trumpers and the new version, or whoever comes in, if Trump reruns or whoever they try to replace him with, I think that there's going to be a real shift towards radicalism. And
well, they've been not held accountable once.
Well, and who the fuck has your cronies on your jury?
That's it. The whole thing's a sham.
Yeah.
When the lawyer can come out and say things that are demonstrably false, that immediately on air reporters can go, well, that's actually a lie. This is what was actually said. This is the actual time frame. This is when these things actually happen. And there's no one holding him accountable other than somebody else who does a similar job getting them going, well, we think that this is not true for this reason. Like, they even had to come out at the beginning, and they had from the Republican Party people that said, well, yeah, we don't think this is constitutional. So they ruled on it, said, no, this is constitutional. We can go ahead with it. Okay, fine. I still don't think it's constitutional.
Well, they also didn't think
after he's out of office.
The election was valid.
Exactly.
And they don't think it's constitutional.
And there was nothing that was going to change it, because they had the argument. They said, we don't think this is great. Okay, we'll have the argument. No, it is constitutional. They go, okay, fine. That's what you think. I still think this. Well, then how do you ever have a discussion or a compromise with someone who just goes, oh, that's what you think? Okay, great. There's nothing you can ever say that's going to change my mind. I'm still going to do what I want.
We're disagreeing about reality. We're
Blatantly.
disagreeing about reality.
And that's something that no one, I think, ever, because they talk about, when they wrote the Constitution, they couldn't have pictured this. And that people involved in the process would just blatantly disregard reality, close their ears and cover their eyes to go, nope, this is what I want. This is how I picture it. This is what it's going to be. As long as I just don't say that it's true, it won't be.
Fallon Fox is a real woman.
There you go.
It's the same principle. Now, back to politics. Despite the fact that she's horrifically injured people, reality, that's reality. Yeah. The physiology is completely
when you said
different.
that, though, because that just reminded me too of this is just the reality of the situation. Sage Northcutt, who was an absolute stud MMA fighter, young guy though, like young early 20s when he got his first pro fights in the UFC, like had some stumbling blocks. So he went to a different league. His first fight in that other league is fighting this guy named Cosmo Alexander, who is a legit bad K1 kickboxer. Comes out in the first round, hits this kid like Superman kid, kick and stand and do a front flip just standing there. I've never seen anybody do that. Just standing still, do a front flip standing. It's insane. It looked fake. He comes out and he punches this kid right down the fucking pipe, breaks his whole face. Because he's someone who has smashed his hand over and over and over and hits a kid who's 21, 22 years old who hasn't had his face smashed in over and over and over. He got hit with a fucking baseball bat.
Well, okay, that's fair.
I'm just saying that's basically what that experience is too. You know what I mean?
And well, they're the same gender, and there's just completely
and again,
outclassed.
but different fucking levels.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, different levels. Okay, so back to politics, or back to the American politics stuff, where you're denying reality. Just because you have a certain feeling about something doesn't make it change the empirical facts. Yeah. And the empirical facts of a situation is that you lost an election. The empirical facts is I'm forgetting. The facts are, I had it just a second ago. What the fuck? Anyways, so the facts are that you lost an election and that these are impeachable offenses. You can impeach Clinton for a blowjob, but your rapist in charge here, the admitted sexual assaulter in charge, that's okay.
And both impeachments, like on tape, on video, they have more evidence. Like everybody who's a prosecutor is like, if these were criminal cases, this is a mountain of evidence. There's no way you'd lose. But again, when you have one side that's already decided the outcome before they start, they've come out and said exactly how they're going to vote, and then that's exactly what they did. That's a sham process.
It is a sham process.
It's not even like.
And if you can have co-conspirators on your jury,
that's it too. That's it too.
You're being charged with a conspiracy, and you put 2 or 3 of the people that were so behind you as part of the conspiracy as your judges.
Well, and we were going to call witnesses, and then I didn't hear about any witnesses being called. And if they did, like all it did was just shoot more holes in it. Like that Kevin McCarthy, I was a phone call I heard. He was like the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, he was a Republican. When this shit was going down, he phoned Trump. and was like, hey, you got to call your people off here. They're coming down here and going crazy, And he goes, those aren't my people, And he's like, those aren't. No, these are your people. He's like, you got to do something about it. You got to call them off. And he goes, oh well, sounds like maybe they just how did he put it? Maybe they're just more passionate than you are, or maybe they believe this a little more than you did, or something like that. And Kevin McCarthy on the phone call goes, who the fuck do you think you're talking to? This is a guy that's gone to bat from the whole time and like is going to go and lie for him basically in this Senate hearing and vote to keep from being in. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, wait, what are you talking? He's like, call your boys off, And he's like, well, I think they just want it more than you do. Hey, and it's like, holy fuck, there's no loyalty and shit. And that's
so that was about the people that were at the Capitol
while it was happening.
Yeah, that's
while it was happening.
See, and that's just it.
And then that guy still didn't vote to fucking impeach him, even though he knew that he knew when he phoned him. He said, these are your guys. These are your people. You have control of this. You can do something. And he goes, I don't give a shit. Well,
okay. So what has happened to the democratic process and common sense and compassion in our political system?
Well, they keep not being held accountable.
They
keep not being held accountable.
The system is set up so they can weasel out of
their
it.
Accountability within the system a lot of times is we're going to give you a talking to or a sitting down, or you get removed from a committee. It's not a loss of position. It's not jail time. It's usually not fines. Sometimes it's fines, but that's very rare. It's nothing real world practical. It's all imaginary bullshit from your play game world that you guys all fucking created and manipulated. Well, you don't get to play in this part of the play game anymore. And they go, okay, well, fine. Well, I'll go play in this part of the play game. But many of them are taking it outside that into the real world and then continuing to do that same bullshit because they've realized there's no fucking repercussions for them. All it is votes. And if they can keep getting voted in, even if it means manipulating it, it doesn't matter. Mitch McConnell's a piece of shit and he still keeps getting fucking voted in.
All my friends that were into drugs and gangs and underworld lifestyle shit should really get into stocks and politics if they don't want to go to jail and do the same shit.
If they're good at it at all, give it 2-3 generations and their kids and grandchildren will.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're looking at. These fucking people that run shit in any kind of level of government, if you're like, oh, my dad used to, okay, well, yeah, it's gangster shit then. Because you go back far enough, even 100 years in North America, any kind of industry you're into, there's gangsters into it. It doesn't matter what you're fucking doing. And that's how dynasties running this stuff.
I read some really interesting, it was in a book on fascism, a little fast book. And
you were writing or reading?
Yeah. I'm revising it for a new culture.
How to be a modern day fascist and raise a
fascist
perfect daughter.
3.0. Yeah. Social fascism. But so this book on fascism pointed out that all the corporations, whether it was like Fairburn or BMW or Nissan in Japan or any of the real money behind the industry in Nazi Germany and in Japan didn't shift at all when they changed the political spectrum. They were allowed to keep their property, allowed to keep their profits, allowed to keep the same boards of directors. So the power behind the throne hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. Ford was a rabid anti-Semite. He republished the Protocols of the Elder of Zion in Dearborn News paper that he ran. He wrote a book called The International Jew. Mm-hmm. Henry Ford from Ford F-150 Ford, the Nazi, and then Nissan was behind the fascists in Japan. An interesting thing is, I think it was when MacArthur took over Japan, they didn't even kick out the fascists that they defeated in the government because they realized that they're going to need to fight them against the upcoming communist threat. Mm-hmm. So Japan's fascists stayed in power. Mm-hmm. Like they and so that's kind of it. I've talked about Japanese culture enough that when you go there, it's very rigid and very, I'm pretty sure, short of like the anti-Semitism and concentration camps, that's how a Nazi party runs. Is how Japan runs. Like, you have individualism, but you are part of a collective. The government has oversight in almost every, corporate thing. Plus, they have an underworld that's kind of like the secret police that you call up if you need people disappeared. Like, there's that element. So these new political systems, whether it's America, they're links with organized crime straight up. When there's stuff that they don't want The Irishman, the movie The Irishman with the union, the labor unions and the mafia being in cahoots with people. You need dirty jobs done dirt cheap, or maybe not so dirt cheap. You need people disappeared. You need compromise. You need pictures of them with prostitutes or whatever, compromising positions. You call up your shady friends. These people are in cahoots, and we forget about that. because we're too busy screaming about bullshit like racism or perceived racism,
or
perceived.
idolizing these jerk offs too. You know, like
Yeah, I want to be a billionaire. I want to be a billionaire. How'd
Yeah.
you get there?
Yeah.
Who'd you fuck over to get there? How many small towns, small community,
telling that
indigenous
story.
people? Yeah, right. Well, I think that's the other element. So those stories are being told, but it's being convoluted by this infighting and back and forth and all of that stuff. I was talking about this with my partner, B, there today, and she's like, well, yeah, like all of these things are valid. People have a right to be whoever they want to be. They have a right to have some dignity and to have equal opportunity. These are all valid. But being screaming at everybody about that is really detracting from who's really pulling the strings at the top. Nobody's wondering who's running Nestle and who's running BMW. And
why are
who's
they keeping
running...
you screaming at each other?
Yeah, who's paying for
Well,
this
and
to
that's-
happen?
And you know, it's funny you say that too, because it's, yeah, as much as it is people worked up, how much of it is people getting them worked up?
Social media is a profit-based industry. It is not
Mm-hmm.
an even equalized playing field. You're being fed an algorithm.
Yep.
You know, it gives you what you want. And the more people are in these insular cliques and they get pushed further and further apart,
The easier it is to sell to them.
yes, easier it is to sell because people love conflict. People
Oh,
love
sure.
conflict.
Well, that's the easiest way to bind a group together. Give them a common enemy.
Demolition's easier than construction, right? Tearing shit apart and attacking is much easier than helping somebody build something, you know, and trying to understand the common ground.
And especially if you're not there for that, you're just. I need to do something that gets people energized in some way. What's the thing I can do? Burn it the fuck down. That'll get everybody energized. You know, I could build a barn. Yeah, but if we burn one, everyone's going to come right now. If we build one, it's going to take weeks. You know,
Yeah, everybody wants to be there for tearing this shit apart.
build a barn.
Build a barn. What was it? There's this girl from Ontario. Her name's Elise Hadigan, and in the in the 90s, she was recruited when she moved from Romania to Canada by a group because she was an isolated teen, by a group called the Heritage Front, and she was an organizer for one of like the most prolific neo-Nazi organizations in North America. She had no issues being on camera, answering the phones, being in news releases, the whole nine. She was part of like the neo-Nazi movement. Well, you give her 15, 16, 17 years. I don't even remember how many years it's been, but now she found out that she's Jewish. She is now Jewish activist, LGBTQ, working very strongly against the Nazi movement. Now, in a world where she would have been attacked and canceled and ridiculed into silence and obscurity forever, her voice would be silenced. Same thing with an activist by the name of Christian Piccolini. He was the head of Hammerskins North America, I think. He's one of the heads of Hammerskins North America, like hate crime after hate crime after hate crime. His job now, he runs, freeradicals.org. He runs kind of like a railroad out of the hate movements for young radical kids that have been recruited into neo-Nazi gangs and that kind of thought. But if you're just too busy canceling them and attacking them, you're pushing them further into the
You know what he said
underground.
20 years ago? It's like, well, what's he doing right now, though?
Yeah,
Is he
what's
still
he
that
doing?
same piece of shit? Is
Look
she
at
still
me.
that same piece of shit? Exactly. That's the whole.
Exactly. Let's look at
Look
you,
at this
God.
piece of shit. No, well, you know what? And what I was thinking the whole time is like how biblical that shit is. Is that that a person can be the worst version of themselves, and then they can go to the opposite end of the spectrum and try their best to help fix other people that were like that. You know, and that's some
Redemption.
Jesus-like shit, right?
It's a redemption
Whereas
story.
sitting in the middle of it and looking at the process and then going, well, I don't like where they were at that point in the process, and I don't like what they said then, and I don't like this. Doesn't sound very fucking biblical to me. That sounds like the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, almost any of the saints that you read up on were pretty nasty sinners in their previous to their revelations that they had.
That's
you know?
it, man. If you're pious your entire existence, it's pretty fucking easy to just stay that path. If you strayed fucking hard and you've been the worst of the worst, then you can come back and pay in your atonement and whatever it is you got to do physically in the world or verbally, and then go and do that. That's where the fucking story is. That's
How
always
high can
the
you
story.
reach if you never know how low you can fall?
Nothing starts out with it. Well, I had everything I needed, and it was an easy voyage, and then it finished. You know what I mean?
It's kind of
Good-
interesting.
good tale.
Alan Watts said that nobody who is unbroken finds Buddhism, because the teachings of Buddhism really apply or really resonate with people that are like, there's something broken about our world.
Sure.
And
Well, hey, and why would you need it? If you were always
Yeah.
in balance, if you were always in
I don't
balance, and
need any
everything
new
went smoothly,
philosophy.
then why would you need to find Buddhism?
yeah, there's no seeking in those that aren't trying to fix something that isn't broken, because you're seeking what's the key to what's going on. Now,
Yeah, and if you don't know something's broken,
Yeah.
or maybe you just don't have anything broken. which show me one, god damn it.
Right? Yeah,
show me
yeah.
one not broken person.
Well, and I tend to think that maybe this is part of what's going on down in the States, that there are a lot of Christian, wholesome families that have been raised going to church, and they've like been kept away from trauma and shielded from all this stuff, that now have a whole bunch of traumatized individuals that are banging and rattling pots and saying, listen to us, and they're like, but that's not real life. You guys are demonic.
Yeah.
You guys are, Satan's legions or whatever. Yeah. And it's so far removed from their reality that they can't even relate to a people that never had a voice, that were being shot by the police, that were being hate crime, gay bashed, or whatever the case may be, stabbed up, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. It's stabbed up. Well, there's this horrific fucking story, and it was a trans woman picked up a guy at a bar, takes him back to the hotel. Apparently she was very attractive. They get back to the hotel, Buddy finds out what he got into and stabbed her 50-60 times. And and again, not to victim blame, do you think maybe you should have disclosed in advance? This guy is violent. He's kind of like, he's a Marine. He's got a fucking huge knife on him, like a Bowie knife. Maybe he's not...
Really? He had it with him even?
Yeah, right? Well, the other
these
element...
all seem like warning signs no matter who you are.
That guy might have stabbed anybody he went home for.
If you're out at the bar and there's a guy who has a huge Bowie knife with him and seems violent, I wouldn't go with him.
Well, obviously, he's going to be a rough trade across the board. But the fact that he was probably... My guess in my rational brain, is he was probably getting a blowjob. And then things were going to take the next step, and he saw a pecker, or this came out, and he just couldn't. His male ego couldn't handle the conflicting emotions, and it had to project its hurt or its surprise in violence. Yeah. And it was tragically and horrifically violent.
And probably somebody who, at his core, had been told his whole life not to be so weak and not to be so whatever.
Fag or
whatever, and then now you're at the pinnacle.
And now you
of
are
it.
that
thing.
exactly,
and just freak out. And
so that's that jail
we
mentality.
gotta just laugh it off, bros. You know what I mean?
Laugh
you get in
it
that situation
off.
next time, just laugh it off. Oh fuck, bro, I didn't know.
Yeah, but in some
you want
environments,
a coffee or
well, maybe he's done time in jail. Maybe his friend, he comes from an
Oh,
environment where that stuff is
very
like
triggering thing.
You are that
I remember
guy.
one time, this is somebody we both know. The phrase "goof" got thrown around one night at a show, and he took real offense to it.
Yep.
And somebody was like, "Well, you're being a fucking goof." He's like, "Well, no, bro, that's not what that means back inside." And they're like, "Well, fuck, bro, you're not inside."
Yeah, I with the word "goof," it's kind of an interesting one because I'm not a jailbird, but I've been around that environment with a lot of people that are, and I don't take it as a light thing to throw around. Because I know that environment.
Anybody
right?
else? What, you goofy?
Yeah, he's a goofy
goofer?
little fuck. You don't take him
around?
seriously.
Yeah.
But in jail, that's like you might as well be a pedophile. You're like the zero respect. You're the creepy, like you are absolute scumbag.
Sure.
To call somebody that and they don't respond, yeah, they're worthless. So you don't. And I've had a couple guys that wanted to fight me, call me goofs, and I'm like, sorry, it's your world, not mine. That really doesn't touch me here in my heart.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Call me the N-word. I don't know. What do you got
might
for
as
me?
well. Yeah, right.
What do you got for me? I don't know.
But
Doesn't really hurt my feelings.
But if it would have gone the other
Everybody
way,
else around you probably won't
them's
like it.
fighting words, right?
Oh, for sure. Stabbing words, I imagine.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, it's kind of a tough one. And then okay, so back to the stabbing situation in the fetish community in our BDSM world. On one of our websites, I saw this thing, and it was an essay written that if you expect a trans person to disclose their genitalia before you date, you're a phobic and you're a bigot. And I'm like, well, do you want to read this article over here of the girl that got stabbed up because she didn't?
Maybe not everybody's there yet.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, well, I'm not going to justify that stabbing. It's
yet.
not fucking like at all. That's horrific. Yeah. But at the same time, you got to know the world you're living in. Yes. You have to understand who you're engaging with, especially on a fetish site. Half these people are looking for rough trade in the first place, and they're going to end up with more than they bargained for if they deal with the wrong fucking person. Let's be honest and disclose right off the bat.
Doesn't hurt.
You know,
right?
hey, I get cold sores. If I eat your
this?
pussy and you get herpes, don't be mad at me because, I shouldn't have to disclose. Like, fuck, there's certain things that are just wise to disclose in advance, right?
Fucking right. Because you understand the real life practical repercussions. This is not imaginary. It's not, well, what about my feelings, though.
It's not
yeah,
theory
but what about
land.
herpes, though? You know?
Yeah, it's not theory.
What about
And-
stabbed to death, though?
Well, okay. So another element that B and I were discussing, because she's a university-educated person, she's got 7 years university.
Boo!
Boo,
No,
fucking
just kidding. Yeah.
intellectuals.
Boo!
And-
Burn
and-
all books. Fuck that. Yeah.
Well, and she the books. She pointed out that you go to university and these people have so much theoretical knowledge about how things are supposed to be. Then you leave university and you enter the real world and you realize that you're underprepared for what smashes you in the face. So I think in a lot of ways there's all these liberal arts degrees that come out and then start telling society how it should work based off of theory, but you don't know how reality actually is. You haven't done the psychology of the male ego, the female ego, and like all of this stuff where it's like, you need to change because my book says you need to change. Okay, do you know who I am?
My upbringing says you need to not put your fucking finger in my
Yes,
face ever
yes,
again.
100%. I'm gonna bite you.
Your book's
Like-
cool and all, but I got about 40 fucking years worth of don't you put that fucking finger in my face again.
Yeah, and
That I need to overcome. That's
Well-
not the respectable, positive way to deal with things.
Well,
but
I find it
keep your
very
finger out of my
interesting.
fucking face while we're at it.
I find it very interesting how these people come out of these lofty positions of education and they have all this knowledge about intergenerational trauma, but they aren't able to apply it to a guy like me or a guy like
Well,
you.
hey,
It's like, how does trauma form who you are as a male in this society?
Well, and they themselves, they got to that position where they could analyze it, probably because they didn't grow up with it. If you're in university and you're getting a degree and you're doing all that stuff, it's probably less likely you came from a abusive alcoholic background where
You're
they
not
weren't making the
drowning your
bills.
sorrows to try and run
Exactly,
away
right?
from
You
your
probably
real life
already are a
trauma.
few steps ahead of the people that you're trying to identify with. Plus, you've just had however many 4 years or 6 years or however long your fucking course is of them telling you, well, these are the parameters within which we work. And then I don't know how often they do this, where they tell you, okay, now go out there and be flexible. These are how we think it should work. This is ideal, but let's go out there and be flexible, because they don't. They go out and say, well, no, these are the rules. This is how it should
it's
work.
gonna be.
And I mean, if you just tried harder or you just did the right things, this is how it would work for you. And again, they're going, well, you don't understand where I came from because you didn't grow up cold and poor, but you're still going to tell me how the world should work. And that's pretty hard to reconcile for most people.
Well, and I find that it's crazy because they can relate to people they've never met and that they would never interact with,
Yeah.
but they can't see those same principles with the people they're interacting with every day.
Well, and what's interesting is that it's like I don't even think that they. I think that they analyze them. You know what I mean? It's not even like an empathy thing, because then they would understand why they got there, right? It's like, well, no, under these circumstances, this plus this equals that. You should be able to, with this much money a week, and I don't know why you can't make ends meet on this. And if I'm your social worker, for example, and why aren't we able to get these things together? Well, this math all adds up. And you go, well, yeah, but you don't have the math in there where I have to sleep for 14 hours 2 days out of the week because I'm so depressed and I can't stop crying. And you don't have the other ones where I'm hungover all the time because if I don't drink, I have to remember everything that happened to me when I was a kid. So I got to get hammered every night, and that's where that other $40 goes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and then like, well, that's not rational. That's not reasonable. Okay, cool. Nothing about this is, though. It's all reactionary. It's all fucking stop gates to help deal with the abuse until you don't have to anymore, you know? So when those things start including, okay, cool, now we're going to get you in a program so we can fix those core things and maybe we can get there. But again,
There's no one
people-
method.
People disconnect right from the beginning because they don't feel that you understand them. You're looking down on me. You don't get where I've been from. You don't know me. I don't know
Well,
how many times somebody hears that trying to work with people.
Okay,
right?
and in that sense, that goes back to that idea of somebody who's not in our community doesn't understand our community.
Exactly, right.
Somebody who hasn't experienced our trauma doesn't understand our trauma.
Yep.
But what I see as a male coming from, a Canadian
Are you, though?
prairie. Well, hey, no, biologically. So coming from my set of circumstances, right? I relate to people that have come from my set of circumstances, that have had a hard upbringing, that share a culture, share language, share interests, share common value systems. And if I can get advice on healing from somebody who shares my value systems and we talk amongst ourselves on how to be a better human being, that's one thing. But when I see other people continually barraging from the side on what I need to do, what I need to do, what I need to do, this is no different than somebody growing up marginalized, being barraged from the side with everybody saying what they need to do.
And I got to think that that's
I don't
what the
think-
people that are calling you a bigot, like, whether it's justified or not, that's probably how they're feeling,
fucking
right?
hate people.
I know, but I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's like we talked
That's the
before.
only bigotry I got.
It's like we
It's
talked before
across
when
the
I
board.
said I was like, I hate it when you do that. I am not yelling. You know what I mean? But that's I think that's more our thing, right? Like, And if their intention, I mean, again, it's not. Nobody's doing it the right way. You know what I mean? Nobody's defending their thing the right way through the internet using the right words. But again, if they're coming at it to be like, no, I want to defend this group because I think you're attacking it, I can even respect that and go, yeah, okay, well, whatever. You're not doing it right, but that's fine.
Well,
but then it continues to be attack after that. It's like, well, what the fuck?
So let's look at
where's the line?
Let's see. Let's look at and maybe politically incorrect. God forbid to be controversial. I guess in a lot of ways, guys like I don't know, from the hood in like let's say South Central LA, gangbangers, straight up gangbangers, Bloods, Crips. Okay, they're 86%, or at least the last statistic, it could be wrong. 86% of young black men killed by gun violence were killed by other black men. Now, people will say, well, that's a consequence of the trauma that they faced and the system that's been pushed on them. So we have to really balance that against the violence that they're doing inside the hood. Valid, super valid. Now, if we say toxic masculinity and our attitudes towards gender and sexuality and sexism and dominance, well, that's a product of our upbringing. That's a product of my dad and his dad and the culture of men that's surrounding me. I'm also, all of my toxicity is a product of the toxic environments I grew up in. So I'm a victim as well. We're all victims of a toxic environment. Now, if we're not playing the equivalency game, hey, no running water isn't the same as pronouns, just like growing up in the hood and shooting each other isn't me being a toxic man that speaks over people or man spreads, but we're all victims of toxicity, and we need to relearn that toxicity in a healthy, compassionate way. We need to see the equivalency there. We need to understand that damaged people. Yep. People that have endured trauma have coping mechanisms that aren't always the most positive. And I would wager to say in our society as men, we've been indoctrinated to be a certain way that needs to be undone, but it also needs to be undone with compassion, and it needs to be undone with kid gloves, because you're handling a big, dangerous retard.
Well, that's it. They need to start handling us how they would like to be
Not
handled
to use
themselves.
the R word.
It was about yourself. I feel like it's perfectly acceptable.
Well,
It's
it's
not accurate.
look at a big abused pit bull.
Yep.
And it's potentially dangerous, and it's been bounced
Bred
around and
for
bounced around.
generations to get this, and when it was young, it was taught all the things you're not supposed to do.
Yes. Now, how do you undo that?
No.
Is it the dog's fault?
Beating
No.
and
Is it the
screaming at it?
breed's fault?
Yeah.
No.
You take away its kennel?
Yeah. You just
You
you
take
lock
away
it
its
in a
food?
cage.
Yeah.
So yeah, you
treat
just
it with compassion. You show it what love looks like. You show what a family looks like.
That is, like, I think one of the best analogies you can look at when you're handling toxic individuals is that you're looking is the pit bull analogy.
Yeah.
Across the board, because people look at pit bulls, dangerous animal.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
No, they look at individual dogs. That dog's sketchy. Why is that dog sketchy? How can we stop it to be sketchy? That dog has special needs. It can't be kept with other animals. Cool. Show it compassion in a single animal environment. You don't just shoot it in the head. You don't beat it to make it a healthier dog. You don't keep
or throw it
screaming
in with
at
all
it.
the other ones and just say, well, see what happens.
Chew yourself up. Oh, you're a bad dog.
Yeah.
We should have known better, but you're a bad dog. The element of compassion with all of this stuff is really being tossed out with the bathwater.
Well, and again, it's especially hurtful to the person who's trying to be compassionate when they didn't always come from a compassionate place. And now this is you making the effort, and it feels unappreciated, unrecognized, and never enough. And it gets to be where you want to throw your hands up and go, what the fuck? Why am I
Fuck
trying
it,
to
I'll
in the
go be
first
toxic
place?
again.
Exactly. You think I'm toxic. You think I'm yelling.
I stopped biting and I only growl now.
Yep.
But I'm being told I'm a bad dog.
And that's hard on because they don't know your journey. They don't know everything. And that's, again, where you're like, well, yeah, they don't. And so why are they judging me? But it's what we do, right? And again, if we can all do it with compassion, then we don't get so worked up over this kind of stuff. But it's fucking hard not to, especially when, for me, like if I think you take stuff like this more personally when it does come from someone who is left-leaning than someone who is right-leaning.
Oh, fuck.
Because you identify with them more, so it feels like someone who should understand you. You should understand me. Then why are you pushing me away? Right? It's almost like family. Like why are you not accepting me the way I am? Where I'm trying to accept you because I'm not doing enough.
Well, I feel incredibly unseen on the work that I'm doing to be a better human being.
Sure.
When I've come what I would consider leaps and bounds. Yeah. Like I said, from the dog that wanted to attack the world and bite everything to the dog that just growls sometimes, and still being told you're a toxic dog.
Well, so here's my thing on this. Then maybe that's the balance of your journey on this. Is maybe you don't get the benefit of having someone appreciate the work you're putting in. You know what? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying maybe in this part of it you don't get that. But that's the balance for, like you said, like what people knew you for before. They knew you this loud, big thing. Well, maybe it's got to be a quiet transition that no one really knows or understands, and then they get this. I don't know, man. I'm just
That's why I'm off
philosophical
Facebook.
here.
That's why I'm off
dude,
Facebook.
right? Exactly. Maybe that's the quiet transition. For
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do now is really focus on my art, focus on my growth.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna do my meditation, my martial art, my training, my painting, my drawing. Really kind of focus on my tattooing, buckle down, because it's my trade, my art, and my life, and my politics and my ethics and being engaged in those communities is definitely going to take second fiddle, because I don't like the extremism that's happening, and I can put my opinions forward through my art,
Yep.
through my creativity.
Yep.
And if you want to criticize me, fuck it, I don't care. You know, I'm not going to read the comments section, as opposed to
Good fucking anybody listening at home. If you ever do anything on the internet, do not read the comment section.
Right.
Doesn't matter what the fuck it is. If it's your aunt, don't bother.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
very rarely positive or helpful.
So that's the thing, you know. Yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. Yeah, we'll wait and see how it all
It's
pans
all
out.
ebbs and flows.
Well, I love any individual as an individual if they show me respect, or if they're in their heart of hearts they're not being extremely toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's a potential friend. I don't care if you're homeless or you're a CEO. If you show me respect, you're going to get respect. And but if you disrespect me, or you treat me as lesser than, or you fucking call me down, or, you know, then I'm going to meet you on that same level, you know? And I don't think people quite get that, you know, like I can be condescending to you, but you still need to show me respect. Or, you know, I can call you a scumbag, low class, whatever, but you still need to respect me. And I think that's a real issue, because I believe in equality, you know?
Right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not like, give me half of what's in your wallet. It's like, let's just treat each other like social equals here. You're not talking down to me. I'm not talking down to you.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to give and take. If you got more to give than me here, cool. I'm going to try and take what I can.
So recently, the Proud Boys and I think 12 other organizations on the far right, extremist, were classified as terrorist organizations by the Canadian government.
Okay.
Which is incredibly progressive, I think. Just like if you're a radical Islamist, or, you know, a Christian terrorist that wants to bomb abortion clinics, outlaw these people.
And I would think in the past that we've seen similar responses when you see something that becomes an issue. And everybody's going, no, this is an issue. Okay, well, now we have to take a step.
Yes.
And then not to say this wasn't an issue for fucking decades, but it's in the forefront right now.
So in some ways, you could consider that cancel culture. But
Hey, we're canceling.
we're canceling these people. If
Cancel
you're a
these damn
Proud
Nazis,
Boy,
yeah.
you're a fucking terrorist.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're basing it on the government's legal definition of what hate and violence and terror is. It's not just public lynch mobs, right?
Yeah.
Now, I had a friend of mine, and a friend of ours, I guess. He said, "Well, why isn't Antifa on that list of terrorist organizations?" And it exploded. The thread exploded, and I felt bad for the guy, because he was being dogpiled with, "You fucking moron, you don't even know what Antifa is." And I'm trying to be the rational guy. I'm like, hey man, like maybe you just have a misunderstanding, because Antifa is an ideology. It's anti-fascism. It's a loose amalgamation of you know, people of color, LGBTQ people, leftists, anybody who really doesn't agree
it's
with
more
fascism.
an idea than a
Yes,
group.
there are specific cells of anti-fascists that have done stupid shit. You know, they've screamed down little old ladies crossing a street to a business they're protesting. They're yelling at a lady for not standing with them in their protest. But they aren't shooting people in the street, or they aren't planting bombs. They're not burning churches like that.
Or at least there's no evidence of that.
There's no
that I've
evidence.
seen.
There
You
was
know,
one guy that-
People can go, well, you don't know. Okay, well, I haven't seen any evidence.
Well, there was
of
one
that.
guy that shot at an ICA detention center with an AR. I think we
Yeah,
had
yeah,
that debate.
yeah.
But these are like really isolated situations versus a concerted effort of real terrorist organizations to start terror campaigns, whether you're a single shooter or bombings or whatever, which is largely what Adam Waffen and the base, these neo-Nazi groups that were designated as terror groups, want to do. And so finally he just blew up, and he's like, fuck it, you people don't want to hear me, I'm out. And I know for a fact all of that conversation pushed him further to the right.
Sure.
Because people were condescending him, people were yelling him down, people were talking over him, people were misinterpreting what he said. And I'm like, man, if you want to have a conversation, I'll explain it, because I get where you're coming from. He sees the burning buildings, he sees the riots happening and the looting, and he sees the cop cars getting smashed in the police station, and then he hears the right saying, this is Antifa doing this. Right? Yeah. Whether it's accurate or not, that's Antifa that is doing that thing, as opposed to, you know, all the terror campaigns, and I'm not even capital, but like legitimate terror campaigns, like assassinating Jewish talk show hosts and things like that the right have planned, that's a different animal. It's a different animal. Now, if there was a group of people that were planning assassination attempts on like, I don't know, Robert, what's his fucking name? Stone, or no,
Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
Yeah.
So if there was a concerted kidnapping and assassination attempt on Roger Stone, that is terrorism.
Exactly.
You know, if you want to burn or assassinate people or bomb buildings, that's terrorism. And that's why Antifa isn't a terrorist organization.
Exactly.
And I tried to explain it, but at the fact, like, the crowd, the mob, just like swarmed on him, and
now everybody's just looking to score points or dunk on somebody, or get a little shot. Because again, it's all a game. They're all just going on and playing the game in the message boards for a little bit. And how do you get a point? And that's an
it's
easy
virtue
place for me to
signaling.
get a point. And,
Yeah, virtue signaling. Look, everybody, I did the right thing.
And for what? Like,
And my partner pointed out, if you really care about educating this person, you could send them a private message and say, hey, man, I saw that message you said, and if you want to have a conversation, we can talk about it here. Because I'm interested in having a dialogue with you instead of for everybody to watch.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, social media right now. Hey, everybody, look at this thing I'm doing over here. I'm doing it in public versus I'm talking to you. Right?
Couldn't agree more.
Man, I'm glad I got an hour and a half to get that off my chest. Fuck. How can you type all this online? You can't.
Right.
You know, let me tell you my opinion on it. And that's 3 paragraphs later or 3 essays later.
Yep. That's all good, man. The whole point.
Yeah, well, ideally. My therapist, it's been on holidays since fucking COVID started. They didn't want anybody within, fucking 9 feet or something like that, and they still haven't started it up. You could do a Zoom therapy session, I guess. I don't know if that's the same, really.
Yeah, I don't care for Zoom. Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
anything
yeah.
else?
That was, kind of talked about the things I was thinking about here. The only other thing was that, the big GameStop little blip there in the stock market fucking around where I thought was interesting, and because I know you were kind of paying attention to that.
I invested and I got out before I lost too much money.
Nice. Yeah.
I know some people that had like, I don't know, I think they bought 7, maybe 8 stocks when it was like $300.
Oh,
and now it's down to like $40.
Not that high.
Yeah, well, man.
Why would they do that? They just didn't understand how it was working, or what?
Well, people were holding, like, if you go on the Wall Street Bets forum, there's still a bunch of people that were convincing people to hold on, because it's going to jack again, because they need to buy these stocks back. The hedge funds need to buy the stocks back, but they didn't. And it crashed, and a lot of people, man, there's people that lost like $250,000 on like this trade. They figured this was going to go, but there was also people that jumped out when it was at a max. They bought it for like pennies or like a couple dollars, and it went up to $400 a share. So I don't know. I do some investing, but I'm not into that highly volatile gambling type investing.
Sure.
There's a few stocks that I'm really interested in. One is Burcon NutraScience, which is a Winnipeg factory that takes canola and peas and extracts the protein, the vegetable protein, and resells it to major corporations to make their vegan meats, vegan cheeses, vegan stuff like that. And I think that's something in the future that's going to explode.
Totally.
And so I bought a bunch of that, and I'm holding on to that for a while just to see, because I think that's a wise investment.
Well, yeah, I think, hey, like if you're just putting your own money into something, if you can just picture, like, what's your utopian vision of the future?
Invest in that.
Exactly. What's doing things that's going to get that there?
See, the other ones, there's a couple startups for psilocybin medical use and recreational psilocybin research. So microdosing. One company is into DMT and psilocybin, and I think there's a couple other drugs that they want to work with the government to get accepted by pharmaceutical companies. And so they're on the stock market. I'm investing in those. The people that invested in weed, canopy marijuana growers, their shares are exploded. In 1 week, I watched it go from $53 a share to $69 a share. That's insane.
Well, Canopy Growers is just out by, there might be a couple different grow-ups, but there's one out by Birch Hills.
Okay.
And I've got customers actually out there. And the one dude, he was one of the guys that was in on it to begin with.
Oh, yeah. He's probably doing okay then.
Yeah, well, he's very comfortable. And said, and it's still growing. And they have to keep buying more land. And
see, but it gets complicated ethically, right? So the Burcon NutraScience that makes this veggie protein, a week before I invested, they signed a huge deal where they're going to be providing Nestle food with their veggie protein. Nestle is the evil corporation that exploits child or slavery to make chocolate, and they exploit
goddamn water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Modern day water thieves.
but now they're going to have vegan pizzas and vegan cheeses and vegan burgers, and as long as they're making vegan food, the evil corporation is going to need that protein. So where's my ethical stance there? Am I supporting the vegan
That's
futures
interesting, 'cause
when
it's-
they'll make a deal with the devil?
It's almost a slower cancel culture as far as making the world more like what you want. You know what I mean? Where you can just cancel. So I don't want any more of that and shut it off. But you want to see more of it. Okay, I got to start investing my money into that, and I won't see it right away. But in the near future, maybe the evil corporation will be the thing that just pumps out good, even if they got their
They have to shift
nefarious
it.
needs. They have to
'Cause they don't wanna be
And it's
canceled.
only profitable to do the positive.
That's a
thing.
good point. Yeah, you can't. It's a moded business plan
Well,
if
and
you're
that's- I
doing
think that's when
unethical
everything
business.
changes, right? When it's
Yeah.
not profitable and it's not ethical on top, because you can still do ethical things if they're not profitable. Nonprofits exist all over the world to do things good for children and whatever, right?
And that's a valid thing, that cancel culture is starting to make unethical things non-profitable.
Exactly,
So,
which was my thing to begin with when we first had the discussion about cancel culture months and months ago. In my head, I was like, awesome.
yeah,
That's-
but I
that's how-
was like,
that's how
what
you
about the
fix these
innocent people
broken
that are being
things.
thrown
exactly.
under the bus?
But again, that's me. It's a hunting rifle. You shoot a deer,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody's like, "No, I can get a whole fucking movie theater full of people with this thing." You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
That's me seeing is what I think it's intended for, and somebody else going, "No, but you know what nefarious thing you could do with that?"
Yeah, or what has been happening.
Ex-
Well,
oh,
because I'm the
totally,
guy who's
totally.
like, a
It's-
gun's
yeah,
a tool, and
yeah.
you're like, a gun's a weapon, and I'm like, cancel culture is a weapon, and you're like, cancel culture is a tool. But
Right?
so yeah, I
That's
guess
what, whose hands is it in, and what are you trying to do with it?
right, exactly.
That determines what it is.
And yeah, so I think like if cancel culture can make unethical business unprofitable, Disney will kick what's her head off the roster because
Exactly.
people will be boycotting it.
Yeah.
Progressive people will boycott Disney. But I'll bet you I'll bet you fucking $100 that if there was more right-wing people watching Disney wouldn't give a shit.
Well,
You know, if it was the
That's-
good old
that's
boys.
the way the world looked for the last 50 years of television.
Yes,
The right
yes.
did right things.
And
There
so
wasn't
they
a
could-
bunch of black people and women, and it was white man, white man, white man,
Yes,
white man.
yes. It was. I've been talking about Mad Men.
Yep.
Like those were the advertising. Those were the people in power, and
Those
that
dudes weren't
series.
Democrats.
That series is so on point. It blows my mind because it's a slice of time when they ran the show, and times are changing, and times are evolving, and we're going to have to move with the evolving times. So that's an interesting angle that if it's not profitable to be unethical, then you'll have to be ethical. And cancel culture, boycott culture is going to do that. And social media, I think, is going to allow that to happen for better or worse, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird too because again, cancel culture, like you said, that's boycotting, that's whatever, and then that was what was used to suppress free speech for and art and anything that didn't fit the mainstream narrative for years. Now it's the mainstream narrative is you better support my art and my whatever it is, otherwise you're fucking done, son.
If I feel offended or
And it's funny too
threatened by
because
you.
it's if you have a, especially with art, if you have a negative opinion of it, well then that can also just be labeled as, well, you don't like it because of the artist. Not that the art isn't valid or that it's just shit. You don't like it because of the artist. Because I was watching Tim Dillon was on one of my favorite podcasters, and again, if anybody listens and hasn't listened to Tim Dillon yet, imagine that he's playing at least a little bit of a character while you're listening to him. He is not because he seems very, very right wing in a lot of things he says, but he's a comedian and he's doing bits on that.
Oh, is this the guy that you
he's
sent
like,
me
no,
and
no,
I
we should
liked him a
definitely
lot?
hunt the homeless. You know,
Oh,
like he'd
yeah,
say
yeah.
stuff like that. He's like, no, it's more profitable to hunt the homeless. What are you talking about?
Oh, my
and people go like,
God.
see, he's nuts. And you're like, he's a fucking comedian, man. He's trying to make you laugh when he says it doing this. But anyway, so he was on Whitney Cummings, who's also a comedian, and she's a lot more well known on her podcast recently. And they were talking because she was trying to make the argument a little bit that like she's like, well, you know, if I'm being a woman and a comedian, I just have to try so much harder to get the same thing. And he's kind of like, well, I don't know if that's the case so much anymore. He says like, I understand like old Hollywood and television and how it all worked and how everything was all this thing. He's like, but now like especially with comedy, like with the internet and the way everything runs, he's like, and you can argue that like men aren't listening or aren't watching. Sure, you could just say that men don't want to hear a woman talk for 3 hours on a podcast. You can argue that, but then where are the women too, though?
Women don't want to listen to us talk over each other either.
Exactly, right? So that's what he was getting at. He's like, so maybe it's not just that. Maybe it is the content of what you're putting out. Maybe it isn't that this gender just doesn't like that. Maybe it's something that just isn't appealing. But then you can kind of go, well, no, it's because of this thing. And who can know? Because it's all fucking opinion and imaginary, right?
Well, we're living in crazy transitioning times.
Yeah.
Like we're
Again,
living in
just be adaptable,
transitioning
right?
times.
Be soft, be fluid, be fucking
Yeah.
ready to just go with it. Again, that's like it's like a forced evolution, right? And we're seeing it in high speed.
Well, I think it's a high speed evolution that some people are trying to force. Well, and there's vying. There's the old guard, and there's people that are really vying for the new guard to come into play, and then there's a whole bunch of people caught in the middle
Well, and
that
how-
are just on the boat, and
So-
people are trying to fight for the rudder.
And well, things like that GameStop thing happening, where all of a sudden people go, "Oh, well, if Wall Street and shit isn't such a club we can't get into, and then maybe we can actually fuck with some stuff, and it's not as set in stone as it is, and everything is a little more volatile, and the world can change quickly, and then, well, maybe we do need to get in front of this and try and figure out how to be the ones dictating the like, I think that's Silicon Valley. I think there's a lot of that happening out there that's like low key, not just the overt shit with Zuckerberg.
Tech billionaires are different than old school money.
Exactly. Those motherfuckers can picture a utopia, and they know how to build it, and they're trying to figure out how to do that because they know, well, they don't want to wait till 3 generations from fucking now. Like people 3 generations ago were building something for the future. You're busting the land and you're building the sod house so that someday we can see a future here. Now they're like, well, no, we've done all that groundwork. Now how do we get to that utopian level? And how do we do it? Well, I'm still young enough that I can either download my shit into a computer and do it forever, or I can just at least enjoy it as long as fucking humanly possible, which might be 200 to 300 fucking years, so I play my tech cards right. You
Yeah,
know?
well, and that's the thing. They're young enough to know that the future is damaged by the old money. And old money can't contend with the new money. And we're seeing new billionaires coming out of nowhere with a whole diverse team. Although there's a lot of like white nerd incels in that community.
Oh, for sure.
But
that just not knowing the technology that like somebody can come out on TikTok and totally fucking swing an election or some shit, because they got I got 1 billion followers. Like,
Yeah.
who's got that much fucking influence? Like the Koch brothers don't even. You know what I mean? Like these real big money guys who are like, yeah, money runs everything, and then all of a sudden now people in their 20s are like, no, money doesn't run everything. I decide what it is, and it's all likes, and whoever's at the sway house gets to decide what the fuck's going on. And when you got 1 billion followers, you just fucking make money.
yeah, you're just an influencer for the sake of being
You just
on there.
exist, and you get to let everybody know what's going on. And
See-
these guys are going, no, I've been pulling the strings for generations, and I'm half a lizard person. And they're going, nah, doesn't matter.
Half a
Doesn't
lizard
matter. Nobody cares about your lizard influences anymore. We got fucking Zuckerberg over here getting everybody jetpacks.
How many minutes are we in? Hour 30. Okay. Lizard people. Let's fucking talk about lizard people. Now, I've watched a ton of David Icke interviews. I've watched his speeches. Now, I think when he's I fucking hope, he's talking about it metaphorically. He's talking about the principle of a lizard mentality. This is what I'm hoping, not a literal shape-shifting lizard being. Now, I can get behind the idea of people having a reptilian lower mind where you're just a greedy fuck, and it's a metaphor. I can get behind that, because that's a mentality. And I joke about it with like, hey, look, the elites are going for a swim with a lizard swimming through the water, right? And I can get behind it that way. But I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that believe in literal alien control, like V. Do you remember the movie or the TV show V from the 80s where they had like lizards under you? Yeah, I think that's what they think it is. Maybe it's like residual in the back of their brain that they saw this. And it's like,
I think that's what Ike thinks it is. 'Cause I'm sure I've heard him say, like, no, like I've seen them change shape. Didn't you see the shape of their eyes change? Didn't you see them shift? There was a shift there. You slow the frame down, you can see the shift where they go to a reptile and then back. You know what I mean? Like, well, maybe.
Well, maybe. This is why another reason I'm off Facebook. I was involved with like these like Carl Jung philosophy discussions, and every once in a while somebody would post, "Oh yeah, we're a mining planet run by aliens, and there's no debating it." And I'm like,
there's no debating.
Okay,
You're probably right though.
yeah.
I know.
And
I
I'm like, any source on that? They're like, how much time do you
if
have?
there's not lizard people, I don't even know what we're doing here.
Well,
You know what I mean?
but okay, if you listen to that same philosophy, right, and you consider the lizard people a sociopathic mentality, the entire thing makes sense.
Yeah.
The entire thing makes sense. That the elites need to have a sociopathic mentality in order to do what they can do and fuck over the world for their own profit. shit, David Icke makes sense again.
Yep.
You just
You gotta
don't
be
talk about like
cold-blooded.
it's a
Yeah.
physical thing.
But I mean, even if even evolutionary, like maybe there's a reason that like bloodlines mattered, right? You look at that and you go, well, maybe it carries that shit, that whatever that genetic shit is that helps keep you that cold, calculated, fucking takeover, not give a fuck that you know you're colonized. You're intelligent enough to know what colonization is, and you continue to do it.
Ooh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to be
yeah.
a different level because a
Well,
lot of
that
people get there
model-
and go, "Holy fuck, what are we doing?" When I can
Conquering,
fix it.
taking.
Yeah, man. You got to have a different because again, even like monkeys and shit. I usually they seem like they want to group together. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Usually they want to do stuff in a group and try and work together. And if somebody's getting punished for something and all these tests they do, they're like, "Well, fuck, we're not all doing that." You know,
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
And this seems like the opposite of that. This seems like, no, fuck you. I'm gonna get what I can from mine and my kin. You know what I mean? And
The I, me, and mine
that's-
versus the us, we, and our.
and I guess like there's two different ways. I'm just gonna get fucking ridiculous for
Nope,
just
nope.
a second here.
Oh,
But there's two
God.
different ways where you could get to like how we could live right alongside someone who, like, say we have a monkey lineage. Say we are living alongside something that
Lizard
does have a
lineage?
lizard lineage.
Oh, Lord.
Because think about it, right? You know what I mean?
Think about it.
If
Think
it's,
about it.
exactly. My old man used to do that all the time. Eh? He's like, you ever notice how a fucking unborn fetus looks just like an alien? Think about it.
Well, and that all those things are great hypotheses, and
Hey.
they're fun to play with.
Yes.
And some people can take the logical jump towards it becoming a theory that they're running with, as opposed to a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And but I think that's they've skipped an element in the scientific process.
Well, see, so the one that I like is even less scientific than that. It's like the Anunnaki idea, and that they were because they didn't just try monkeys even during their theory. They were hybriding animals and other human-like things, and there was things with cat heads and bear bodies or whatever the fuck they're doing, right? So which isn't that much of a stretch. Cat head with a bear body, it's almost the same thing, but. It was like a mouse with a rat's face. So anyways, that maybe while you're fucking around and genetically manipulating shit, you get an offshoot of monkey men that are like kind of what we're doing here, and you get some lizard men that are kind of what we're doing here, but they don't have a fundamental thing. And one, it can kind of be your ruling lineage, because you're going to need managers for your fucking slaves, right?
Well, except that ruling lineage can be overthrown by revolution and
Well,
stuff
sure.
like that.
And
And then they become the new lords and the new landowners.
But what continues to happen throughout history, right? The power dynamics, they shift and change, but it's very rare that like the serfs rise up, take over a whole thing in a movement, and then the feudal system's gone and there's a whole new thing.
Well,
right?
colonialism hasn't
It's
disappeared.
always just a shifting of hands, and this one's cousin came into power instead, and then they got taken out, and these ones came over, but they're kind of the same lineage from five generations back. They were all breeding together, you know. Like it's interesting how much of it, even like you look at the monarchy, like British, there many of them are German royalty. You know, so you keep having these bloodlines that for some reason keep staying in these things. And again, if it was a controlling ruling class that had them, that knew like, look at, if we keep these people poor, dumb, sick, they're going to keep doing what we want them to. So we just have to keep making sure that we tell them they can't get more educated because of the space god that's going to come down them. So we got religion. We can take care of that like that. We can make sure that they're living in these circumstances that we wouldn't barely even keep animals in. But if they keep surviving, they'll keep breeding and they'll keep giving us more stock for feeding our system for what we need to get our wealth and keep our comfort or whatever it is.
See, okay, so
Again,
it's a
I'm
possibility.
being ridiculous.
Now, no, okay, so to me, I tend to think that, and this is my real belief, that there's ancient technology, psychological technology that was handed down from Egypt or even Mesopotamia through Egypt, through mysticism, meditation, all of that hypnosis, accessing altered consciousness that gets us in touch with archetypal principal ideas that people have called gods. You know, whether they are war gods, peace gods, love gods, trickster gods, or even furious, manipulative, selfish god forms. These are all archetypal psychological principles that the more you focus on it, the more powerful they become in your life.
Sure.
So if I focus on affirming myself and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm praising Vishnu and flowers and, you know, and everything's going to be beautiful. Well, then that's going to emanate inside my psyche, which reflects on my lifestyle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it'll come on
And-
your art and your talk. And
yeah, but these
fucking
ones
food.
that the archetypes that really pushed a one lord over everybody else, and then there's all subservient and you bow to the lord. The ones that pushed that archetypal thought process on people were also pushing a brainwashing mechanism to obedience to Lord, obedience to Father, obedience to landowner, obedience to the king or
Yep.
the monarchy, which is a pantheon of gods, right? And that comes back from the Egyptian idea of I am God on earth. I am a God king. And I tend to believe that if we can, and I've learned this through, meditation, Kabbalah, hypnotherapy, yoga, chakra stuff. If we pay attention to reclaiming our own consciousness, we realize how arbitrary those structures are. But this is where that idea of the lizard people would be a mentality. It's a lizard god form. It's a lizard archetype, a root elementary idea of self first. Everybody else can get fucked. And I'm above everybody else and nobody else is important. Almost like sociopathy, right? And whatever thing or whatever methodology or principle that you have to worship or emphasize in your life to bring sociopathy to the forefront, I think has been done by power brokers. In order to keep their power and to keep the top of that hierarchy while everybody else has been hidden from the knowledge that would free them from this.
Yep.
Right? Whether you're not supposed, it was forbidden for thousands of years to study the Kabbalah. If you were under 40, if you weren't a man, if you weren't married and you hadn't had all your kids, this is only for us. It's a hidden technique. You go to India and it's a whole other ball of wax. They're willing to endure all kinds of lifestyle suffering because they know this is a temporary thing and there's 3 million gods. But you go to Europe, you render your tithe to the church. The church works in cahoots with the government. So you've got your propaganda and your economy. You've got your psychology and your accountants. And they work hand in hand to control the minds of the masses and to control the finances of the masses. And this is, to me, my major issue with Christianity, because it's weaseled its way into our law books, it's weaseled its way into our psyche, it's controlled our entire lifestyle, and we've been taught anything outside that paradigm or that narrative or that, whatever, that model is evil. It's bad.
Well, and it's been turned into like some sort of tax structure. It's not, because it's, again, like you said, you've got to give your money to the church, and they don't be taxed on anything like that.
No, they don't get taxed on property
and your time, and then they're going to also have influence in the government level. Even there's supposed to be a separation of the two. You're still going to have to swear to God that you're gonna uphold the Constitution or whatever it is you're going to do for those guys. It's always still commingled, right?
And it's authority. It's
Yes.
always
And
obedience
it's always control.
and subservience
Yes.
to
Yes.
authority.
And again, why do you have to have that? Well, because there's value in it. There's either money or there's physical human labor that you can take out of that.
And it supports a system of colonial structures, right? And so the psychology of the brainwashing put forward by a monotheistic religion supports the economy of capitalism, where the labor is at the bottom and the benefits at the top. Now, when you step away from the morality of indoctrinated Christian ethics and you start really doing that work, like meditation work or chakra work or Kabbalah work, you start realizing, holy, what's going on here? I can be outside this structure. I'm in charge of myself. I'm free to do what I will. And the old priesthoods and the priestly caste would say, that's dangerous for you to do. Only we're allowed to do that because we're in touch with God, and the common people that do meditation are going to lose their shit and go nuts.
You could stray.
Yeah, you could become evil. You could get the wrong fucking archetype operating through your system, and next thing you know, you're a monster, or you become Gandhi. So it depends. You're the next Jesus, but there can only be one Jesus. He's the Son of God. There's only one of them. Psych wards are full of them right now. All right, just go ask. You'll run into a whole bunch. Yeah. They'll tell you straight up. Oh, I'm Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's getting a little deep at the end. But
Just like a paddling pool.
yeah, right.
It's a little deep at the end. Not that deep,
2 weeks
though.
from now, again?
I think so.
All right. Love you too.
Love you, dude. All right.
Peace
Bye-bye.